Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your kind and encouraging comments. Your support is what keeps us going and always providing the best. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell button so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And don't forget to press the like button if you enjoyed the video. Your support means a lot to us. On Halloween night, the streets were adorned with children in their spooky costumes, carrying bags of candy and having fun going from house to house. The sounds of laughter and cheers filled the cold air, but there was a dark corner at the end of the street that no one dared to approach. There stood an abandoned, dilapidated house, known among the townspeople for the terrifying legends that surrounded it. The older children had heard about the house and said it had been home to a family that devoured each other due to a mysterious madness. The doors and windows were shattered, and the front yard was filled with tall weeds and tangled plants. But the worst part was the cold that anyone approaching the house felt, as if life itself was fleeing from the place. That night, a group of teenagers talked about an exciting adventure, entering the abandoned house and uncovering the secrets it held. There were 5 of them: Mark, Sarah, Jim, Emily, and Tom. Their courage grew with each step they took closer to the house, and their eyes sparkled with the thrill of the unknown. When they reached the front door, it was strangely ajar. They peered inside, but the darkness was too thick. They used their flashlights to illuminate the place and cautiously stepped in. The smell of mold and damp air filled their noses, and the wooden floor creaked eerily with every step. Inside, the walls were covered with mysterious drawings and names etched in old blood. When they reached the living room, they noticed an altar in the corner, adorned with the remains of burnt candles and small bones. They felt the cold seep into their bones as strange sounds around them grew louder. Suddenly, their flashlights went out, plunging them into complete darkness. The sound of heavy footsteps and the echo of a terrifying laugh filled the room. Sarah started to scream, but her scream was abruptly cut off as if something had grabbed her throat. The others tried to find each other in the darkness, but fear was taking hold of them. The doors slammed shut tightly, and the walls of the room began to close in. The demon had awakened and had seized its victims. They saw a dark creature with glowing eyes standing in the corner, slowly approaching them, feeding on their fear and screams. As they struggled to hold on, they noticed that Tom had suddenly vanished without a trace. They screamed his name into the darkness, searching for him among the outstretched hands and terrifying creatures. But there was no answer, no response. Strange and horrifying images began to appear in the minds of the terrified teenagers. They saw distorted visions of terrifying things, and dark aspects of their souls started to emerge. The feeling of madness and hallucinations began to envelop them, mingling with the deep fear that had taken hold of them as the dark creature drew nearer. These disturbing images intensified. The teenagers were plunged into a nightmarish state, their minds overwhelmed by the terrifying visions and the ever-approaching presence of the creature. Mark, who had been the bravest of the group, began to see the ghosts of the family that committed the gruesome crime in the house, lurking at him from every corner. Sarah, trying to stifle her screams, started to witness the face of the dark creature transform into a horrifying image of one of her distant family members. Jim, who was struggling to keep his mind calm, began to see snippets of his past, distorted and terrifying moments replaying in his mind in a torturous loop. Emily, trying to comprehend what was happening around her, felt herself losing her grip on reality, drowning in a sea of madness. The walls began to close in around them, and the floor seemed to move as if slowly swallowing them. The air became suffocating, and their stifled screams filled the room. They felt themselves losing control of their minds, descending into the depths of madness. They began to notice a strange transformation in the structure of the abandoned house. The walls started bleeding in a bizarre manner, and the floor cracked and crumbled at their touch. The air thickened, as if possessing a will of its own, seeking to drain the life from everyone within. As they tried to escape this nightmare, they faced a horrifying transformation in the dark creature that had been haunting them. Its shape began to change slowly, morphing into a terrifying monster lurking in the shadows, with elongated fangs and eyes gleaming with malevolence. Suddenly, bloodthirsty hands started piercing through the walls, trying to grab hold of the teenagers and crush them. In this dark moment, reality shifted into real nightmares, as terrifying creatures began creeping from every corner, attempting to devour the young souls who had surpassed the bounds of fear. Amidst this terrible chaos, teenagers find themselves trapped in this dark hell, surrounded by outstretched hands and terrifying monsters rushing towards them with ferocity. Blood stains the walls, and the air is filled with the smell of fear and death. As they struggle to stay alive, they feel despair creeping into their hearts, and hope gradually fading away. They realize they have fallen into a trap of hell, and survival seems out of reach. In a moment of despair, Tom suddenly emerges from the shadows, holding a glowing candle. He smiles eerily and approaches them, a knife gleaming with blood in his hand. Finally, you've reached your final destination, Tom says in a terrifying voice, and he begins to advance towards them as they try to escape into the dreadful shadows. The monsters attack. Suddenly, the wall behind them explodes, revealing a horde of terrifying creatures, even uglier than the dark being they were facing. The monsters attack ferociously, tearing their bodies apart and Mark tries to escape, but one of the monsters grabs him by the leg, dragging him forcefully into the darkness. His screams gradually fade as he disappears into the void, leaving behind a trail of blood. Sarah attempts to defend herself, using anything she can find as a weapon, but the monsters attack her from all sides, tearing into her flesh with their sharp fangs. She falls to the ground, her eyes filled. Jim, who had been unconscious, regains consciousness to find himself surrounded by monsters. He tries to crawl away, but one of them leaps onto him, tearing his body mercilessly. He screams in pain, desperately trying to survive, but the end comes swiftly. Emily, who had been chanting the incantation, tries to withstand the violent assault, but one of the monsters leaps on her from behind, sinking its fangs into her neck. The candle falls from her hand, extinguishing the last flame of hope. The words of the incantation fade from her lips, along with her life. Tom, who was under the control of the evil force, laughs maniacally as he watches his friends being slaughtered before his eyes. He raises the knife and advances toward the last survivor. But before he can strike, his body begins to shake violently. A struggle flickers in his eyes, an attempt to regain control. In a moment of awareness, Tom stops and looks around, seeing the chaos and blood. He screams his friends' names, trying to save them, but it's too late. The monsters turn on him as well, tearing him apart mercilessly. His struggle and screams end in utter silence. The abandoned house returns to its deadly silence, with only the whispers of the wind and the eerie echoes of laughter filling the space. Outside, life in the city continues as usual, unaware of the tragedy that occurred in that dark corner. The next morning, children pass by the house, enjoying scary Halloween stories, not knowing that a new tale of horror has been added to the town's legends.